The nurse found my mother's number under emergency contact and hit call, while I was being rushed through the sliding doors, unresponsive. "Mrs. Minky," she said, jogging beside the stretcher, "your daughter Brenda has been brought into the emergency room. She's not conscious and we need family here immediately." On the other end, music played. Applause rose in the background. "My daughter?" my mother asked, like she had more than one and needed to know which one mattered. "Brenda Minky, 29. There was a pause, then my mother lowered her voice. "We can't leave right now. Our younger daughter has a recital." The nurse stopped walking for half a second. "Ma'am, Brenda is critical." My father came on the line, already annoyed. "We're 40 minutes away, and Claire has worked all year for this." The nurse looked through the glass doors as doctors surrounded my bed. Then my mother said the sentence that ended our family before I even woke up. "Call us if it gets worse." But it was already worse. By the time they got me into the trauma room, my skin had gone grey, my pulse was weak, and the doctor was ordering tests in a voice that made every nurse move faster. Someone cut away the sleeve of my sweater. Someone else asked whether I had allergies. I couldn't answer. The nurse called my parents again 20 minutes later. No answer. She left a voicemail. "The doctor needs to speak with you. Your daughter may not survive the night." Still no one came. At 9:14 p.m. my mother finally sent a text. "Keep us updated." Not "Is she awake?" Not "We're coming." Just 3 words that made the nurse stare at the screen before placing my phone gently beside my hospital bag. When they searched that bag for identification, they found my wallet, unopened prescription papers, an overdue medical bill folded twice, and a blue folder labeled Minky Family Emergency Documents. Inside were forms with my parents' names everywhere, emergency contacts, insurance access, old bank authorizations, signatures I barely remembered giving. One nurse frowned and whispered, "Why are they listed on all of this?" I didn't hear that part. But sometime before dawn, I opened my eyes just enough to see fluorescent lights trembling above me. My throat burned. Machines beeped beside my head. A nurse was holding my hand. I tried to speak. She leaned close and said softly, "Your parents know Brenda. They chose not to come." A tear slid into my hairline because I couldn't wipe it away. 5 days later, Diane and Martin Minky finally walked into the hospital carrying grocery store flowers and faces rehearsed for concern. My mother said, "She's probably upset, so let me talk first." My father sighed, "She'll calm down when she sees we came." But when they reached my room, the bed was made. The monitors were gone. The chair beside the window was empty. Only one thing sat on the pillow. A sealed white envelope. On the front, in my handwriting, were the words, "To the parents who asked them to call if it got worse." My mother grabbed the envelope before my father could touch it. "Where is she?" she snapped, as if I had inconvenienced her by not being unconscious where she expected me to be. My father checked the bathroom, then pulled back the curtain around the bed. "Brenda," his voice was sharp, not scared, "this is ridiculous." Diane tore open the letter. The first line stopped her mouth. "I remember the beeping before I remember my own name." My mother swallowed but kept reading. "I remember the doctor saying I might not make it. I remember a nurse holding my hand because no one else was there. And I remember the words you left me with before I could even open my eyes. Call us if it gets worse." My father's jaw tightened. "She's being dramatic." But the room was too clean, too empty, too final for that to sound convincing. The letter continued. "All my life you called me strong. Strong meant I could pay Claire's application fees without complaint. Strong meant I could cover the mortgage gap when Dad said things were tight. Strong meant I could drive Mom to appointments, answer every family emergency, and sit quietly while every dinner became a conversation about Claire." My mother's fingers bent the edge of the paper. "A month before the hospital, I asked why money was missing from the emergency account you told me was for all of us." I could still hear that kitchen conversation. "Mom, there are withdrawals I didn't approve." Diane had not even looked up from her tea. "Don't start this now." Dad had said, "You probably forgot. You've been stressed." And when I pushed once more, Mom's voice went cold. Claire has recital season, Brenda. Don't make everything about you. The night before I collapsed, I called because I was dizzy and couldn't catch my breath. Mom, I said something feels wrong. And you answered, please don't make this another thing we have to manage. My father lowered himself into the visitor chair. The last line on the first page waited beneath my handwriting. But you didn't just abandon me that night, did you? My mother flipped to the next page, so quickly the paper nearly ripped. Before she could read the first sentence, a nurse stepped into the doorway. Mr. and Mrs. Minky. My father stood at once, smoothing his jacket. Yes, we're Brenda's parents. Where is our daughter? The nurse's expression did not change. I'm not authorized to give you that information. My mother laughed once, sharp and offended. Excuse me. Brenda changed her emergency contacts, the nurse said. She also revoked your access to medical updates. Her instructions are clear. People in the hallway began to look over. Diane stepped out of the room with the letter clenched in her hand. I am her mother. I understand, the nurse said. No, I don't think you do. My mother's voice rose. My daughter was brought here and nobody called us properly, and now you're telling me I can't know where she is. The nurse glanced at the chart in her hand. You were called several times. My father cut in quickly. There must be a mistake. We're her emergency contacts. Not anymore. That was when Claire came out of the elevator. She still had recital curls pinned back from the night before, a garment bag folded over one arm, and a confused smile that vanished as soon as she saw our parents standing outside my empty room. Mom, Claire asked, what's going on? Nothing, Diane said too fast. Go wait in the car. But the nurse looked at Claire and said, your sister was critical for days. We called your parents several times. Claire's face went blank. What? She whispered. My mother turned on the nurse. That is private family information. Claire looked at Diane. You told me Brenda was resting at home. No one spoke. Then my father's phone buzzed. He glanced down and the color drained from his face. Bank authorization revoked. A second alert followed almost immediately. Insurance portal access removed. Claire reached for the letter before Diane could hide it. Her eyes moved across the next line, and her voice shook as she read it aloud. Ask Mom why she was more afraid of losing my signature than losing me. My father snatched the letter from Claire's hands. Enough, he said, but his voice cracked on the word. My mother reached for it too. Martin, don't. He turned away from her and read faster. On the third day, I woke up enough to ask who had come. The nurse did not answer right away. That pause told me more than her words did. No one came, not Mom, not Dad, not Claire. Then she told me Claire had never been called. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. I didn't know, she said, staring at Diane. You never told me. Diane's lips parted, but no excuse came out quickly enough. My father kept reading. Months ago, Mom told me to sign simple family paperwork after I got my new job. Better insurance, better benefits, better income. She said it was just practical. I remember her sliding the forms across the kitchen table. Families don't need lawyers between them, she said. I trusted that because I was tired, and because every time I questioned you, I became the difficult daughter. My mother whispered, that is not how it happened. But my father's phone buzzed again. This time he did not look. With the hospital social worker beside me, I learned what those signatures gave you. Medical access, insurance access, old account authority. The emergency fund you promised was for real emergencies. And Mom used it for recital fees, travel costs, dresses and debts Dad pretended not to see. Martin's face hardened, but not at the accusation, at being named. So from my hospital bed, I did what you never thought I would do. I called a lawyer. I revoked every authorization. I froze every shared account. I changed every beneficiary. I removed you from my medical records. I named Marisol as my decision-maker because she answered on the first ring. Copies have already gone to the bank, the insurance provider, the family attorney, and Aunt Ruth. Diane stepped backward. There's one more page, Claire said. Before anyone could unfold it, my mother's phone rang. The caller ID read, Aunt Ruth's. Diane stared at the caller ID like the phone had become a witness. My father said, don't answer. But Claire looked at her and said, answer it. For once, my mother did not have the room under control. She lifted the phone to her ear and tried to sound wounded. Ruth, this is not the time. Aunt Ruth's voice came through so clearly that even Claire heard it. No, Diane, this is exactly the time. My mother's face tightened. Aunt Ruth continued, I have Brenda's letter, I have the hospital call log, I have the account records, and I have a question for you. Diane pressed her lips together. Was the recital worth it? Claire flinched. My father unfolded the last page with stiff fingers. I didn't leave because I was scared. I left because I finally had help. The doctor cleared me to be discharged under supervision. Marisol came the moment she was called. She brought clean clothes, signed what needed signing, and sat beside me while I made every phone call you should have helped me survive long enough to make. The room was not empty by accident. I asked them to leave it that way. For 5 days, you let me wake up to an empty chair, so I wanted you to stand in an empty room and understand what you chose. Diane's hand flew to her chest. She planned this. Claire looked at her. That's what bothers you. My father kept reading, slower now. You ignored the first call. You ignored the doctor's warning. You let Claire walk on stage without telling her I might die, then told her I was resting at home because it was easier than admitting you chose applause over an ambulance. Claire's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. I would have left, she said. I would have walked off that stage. Diane reached for her. Claire, you don't understand. We didn't want to ruin your night. Claire stepped back before Diane's fingers touched her sleeve. You used me, she said. You used my recital as the excuse. The hallway had gone quiet. Nurses passed carefully. A man by the vending machine pretended not to listen and failed. Aunt Ruth's voice came from the phone again. The family knows. Brenda sent everything before you arrived. Diane whispered, everything. The withdrawals, the authorizations, the hospital calls, the text. Keep us updated. Those 3 words hung there without anyone saying them. The final lines of the letter waited in my father's hands. Mom, you treated my emergency fund like a second household account. Dad, you looked away because my money kept things quiet. Both of you taught me that being useful was the price of being loved. The night I almost died, you proved what happened when I had nothing left to give. So I am giving you nothing now. No access. No explanations. No visits. No second chance to stand beside a bed, only after the danger has passed. My father sat down hard in the hallway chair, still holding the page. The grocery store flowers slipped from under his arm and scattered across the floor. Diane did not pick them up. Aunt Ruth told them the bank had frozen the disputed transactions for review. The insurance provider had removed them from every portal. My lawyer had sent notice that any attempt to contact me, pressure me, or reach my accounts would be documented. Then she added, Claire is coming home with me. My mother looked at Claire like she expected obedience to return on command. Claire only said, I need to know how much Brenda paid for me while you let me believe she didn't care. That was the part Diane could not answer. After that day, the version of my parents that they had polished for relatives cracked beyond repair. Calls they expected to receive went unanswered. Invitations stopped coming. The people Diane had impressed with stories about sacrifice started asking for Brenda's side instead. I did not meet them for closure. I did not sit across from them while they cried. I did not let my father say he was overwhelmed, or my mother say she made one mistake, because the letter had already said what needed to be said. Months later, I lived in a small apartment near Marisol. I went to follow-up appointments. I rebuilt my savings one deposit at a time. My new emergency contact answered when I called, even if all I needed was soup from the store. On my desk, I kept one note from the nurse who held my hand that first night. You survived the night. And beneath it, I kept nothing from my parents. No photographs. No birthday cards. No spare key back into my life. Brenda Minky never called them again, because when it got worse they had already answered.